And hi, Richard.
Hi, friend. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. So we have a very exciting episode today because we are going to discover what pAIperTrail is.
That's right. I have a small presentation
Right,
that we could run through. We're not going to explore every single object or get into all the features and stuff like that.
right.
Just a quick show and tell of what the interface
Yeah,
looks like. But mostly what we're concerned with was, what does it do,
yeah,
right? So I'm just going to share my screen, if you
right.
don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Right.
I'm going to share that and I'm going to
Excellent.
enlarge it so that it's showing up on your screen there.
Yeah, it's coming up. Good.
Okay,
And
so you
we're
can
good
see
to go.
my introducing paper trail slide.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's basically what a user is going to experience when they come into the platform. They won't
right.
see the big introducing text or anything
Mhm.
like that, but it's a very easy to navigate, user-friendly environment.
Right,
But what I'm going to get into is first describing what paper trail is in a nutshell.
right.
Okay. What paper trail is an AI-assisted digital paper trail
Yeah,
that simplifies compliance,
right.
right? It gives you clarity on what compliance frameworks and elements apply to your business and why.
Yeah,
Um, that results in a single obligation set without any duplication
right.
across frameworks.
Yeah,
It allows you to give clear ownership and assign accountability to all of the obligations,
mm,
right? And it assigns tasks and collects always ready real-time compliance evidence to
right.
satisfy those obligations.
Mm,
And this is all done with the minimum possible ongoing compliance effort.
right,
Okay, so that's what paper trail is. And we designed it specifically to solve a very, very clear problem.
right.
And what that problem is that compliance itself is pretty complicated these days,
Right.
right? It's proliferating, right? And ultimately, it can be very, very hard to manage day to day.
Yeah,
Often it's managed at audit time or annually, and it becomes onerous.
yeah,
Um, Often companies are enticed into using consulting
yeah,
at a very high price, just so that that consultant can bring the organization experience to the whole
yeah,
thing, right? Compliance is defined across numerous mandates, statutes, acts, regulations, and frameworks. We
right.
call them all just frameworks.
Yeah,
We fit them all, whether they're mandates, statutes, acts, regulations, or frameworks. We fit them into what we call frameworks, right?
yeah,
However, compliance is highly prone to being split across numerous frameworks,
yeah,
right? Duplicated work, right? Across departments and across frameworks,
yeah.
right? That's the nature of all of those mandates and statutes is there's a lot of repetition,
Right.
right? So compliance ultimately can be very, very costly in terms of the time you need to invest in it and the money that it can cost your organization.
Yeah,
And it's not getting any easier for SMEs and mid-market enterprises.
right,
So we wanted to solve that problem with what paper trail is, right?
right,
But I'd like to kind of quantify that problem a little bit,
right.
just so that it's clear for our viewers, how big is that problem? Okay.
Yeah,
Now we can put all of those frameworks into four easy buckets. The
right.
first one is universally required, right?
Yeah,
They're mandated. You don't have any choice, no matter what, no matter what kind of business you're in. And
right.
there's in around nine frameworks in the UK, and we're specifically targeting the United Kingdom
Yeah,
with our initial launch of the product, right? So in
right.
the UK, there's about nine frameworks that are universally applicable
Yeah,
to SMEs, MMEs, and enterprise, right? However, if you wanted to go through and read all of those, all of that documentation, it's
Yeah.
about 1,500 to 3,000 pages of documentation
Right.
that you have to start going through.
Yeah.
Right? And in there is spelled out around 1,200 obligations that you have to fulfill.
Right.
That's mandatory.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you've got the conditionally mandatory ones. Now that depends on your sector, your size, and where you do business, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So it doesn't, those don't apply to all businesses, but if they do apply to your business, then they are mandatory as well. And
Right.
in that space, there's about 10 to 20 additional frameworks. There's another 3,000 to 6,000 pages of documentation that you would have to read.
Yeah.
And it adds an additional 2,500 obligations to
Right.
what you have to produce as outcomes to be
Yeah.
considered compliant.
Yeah.
And that's just the universal, and that's the mandatory universal and the conditionally mandatory ones.
Right.
But then you get into the commercial requirements, and this
Right.
has to do with things like expectations of suppliers, right? Expectations in order to be competitive for bids, tendering, that kind of stuff, right? In that space, there's another 5 to 15 frameworks, right? That's
Yeah.
another 2 to 4,000 pages of documentation and an additional 1,200 obligations that you need to
Right.
satisfy. Okay. And then you've got the strategic ones. Those are people who are mature in their compliance journey.
Yeah.
And they're looking for strategic advantage.
Yeah.
Through in that case, most of the frameworks would be considered best practices as
Right.
opposed to mandatory compliance requirements, right? And in that space, there's anywhere from 3 to 10 different frameworks. That's where you find your ISO standards, right?
Right.
Your HACCP, that kind of stuff. Another 1 to 3,000 pages of documentation, and another 600 obligations spelled out across all of those frameworks. Now, taking a look at that, it's fairly easy to see why a lot of people would go out and find a consultant who specializes in a particular framework, or somebody who, or even establish a compliance department if they can afford it, or at least have a person in charge of compliance.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff to master in order to be compliant. And let's put it into a total. So unconsolidated, your compliance footprint would constitute anywhere from 25 to 40 different frameworks. All right. You're going to have to read, in order to understand them, anywhere from 8.5 to 16,000 pages of documentation. And that's in order to figure out what your 5,500 obligations are in order to satisfy those frameworks.
Right.
Not a small piece of work.
No,
when it's done the traditional way, framework by framework, consultant by consultant, just as needed or last minute must do for the government submission or something along those lines. It's by no means been a simple thing. Especially when you get into the SME and MME space, where budgets are a lot tighter, competition is a lot more fierce. And you and I, we have a soft spot for the smaller guys, the ones that are tryhards, that are growing, and they're faced with onerous lists of obligations in order to be considered compliant, right? So what does a solution look like? All right. Now I say up there, unconsolidated. Right. Keep that in mind. That's the unconsolidated view of the obligations. But what does a solution look like? Okay. The solution sounds very much like a consulting engagement. The first step is to understand the business's profile. Right. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you operate? How do you operate? How big are you? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And then a consultant would typically then determine all the relevant applicable compliance frameworks in your space. All right. That's going to be a piece of work that you'll be paying for. All right. And then if you're lucky, and rarely is it true, because typically compliance consultants are, specialize in a single or a subset of frameworks, not all of them.
Yeah.
So the consolidation of obligations into a single cohesive list with zero duplication is rare, if ever delivered during a consulting engagement, right? But that is what I consider a critical part of the solution.
Yeah.
All right. Along with that, obligation by obligation by obligation should be recommended strategies, tasks, and evidence that you need to produce in order to satisfy that obligation.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what a company wants, I think. They want you to understand the business. They want to know what is applicable to their business, and they want to know how to satisfy those obligations, what they need to give anybody to say that obligation is fulfilled, whether it's a continuous activity or a one-off, having a policy, having a procedure, having a process, performing a task, collecting data, locking down servers, whatever it is. People want to know, not just a tick box of, framework by framework, separate. How many was that? Almost 6,000 obligations, right? Yeah. A tick box exercise is not going to cut it. You want to recommend to the business what they should do, or our best guess at what you should do, right? Okay. And then you want to be able to track the status of, the provision of evidence and the performance of tasks, which result in an ongoing status of an obligation. And you want that to actually move all the way up to the framework level, so that you can understand framework by framework by framework where you stand exactly. Right. Now, I highlight consolidation there because I gave you the unconsolidated numbers, which was in the total, right? Yeah. Just keep that number in mind, 5,500. That's if all of these frameworks applied to your entire business, right? But we can break it down into the various buckets in terms of the various obligations. We did that at the bucket level, right? Yeah. But let's take a look at it in totality, what consolidation looks like. Right. All right. Because this is probably the number one value proposition of pAIperTrail. Right. Is consolidated obligations that apply across multiple frameworks with tracking. Yeah. Right. What does that look like? A consolidation of obligations would look like this. So starting with universal, raw obligations around 1,200. Right. After consolidation, there's 300 to 400. Believe it or not, there's a 60 to 70% overlap across all of those mandatory frameworks. Now, if you add on the conditional mandatory ones, then you sit with, in total, universal plus conditional. Right. That's about 3,700 documented obligations. Yeah. After consolidation, you're anywhere from 800 to 1,100. Most companies would come out in around the 800 to 900, right? That's a 70 to 75% reduction. That's how much repetition there is, overlap across universal and conditionally mandatory compliance mandates, frameworks, acts, regulations, et cetera, et cetera. Now you add on the commercial ones, the things required by suppliers and that kind of thing. And now you're up, it's just the scale keeps climbing up, right? Now you're up to a total of 4,900 obligations. The cool thing is that the scale of obligations before consolidation, it rises steeply, right? Right. But after consolidation, it rises very shallowly. So you're going from, 1,100 on the top end to, 11 to 1,400 on the top end. Right. If you include all commercial, conditional, and universal frameworks, you can get as much as a 78% reduction. Whoa, that's a lot. A reduction basically means that a framework's requirement, where they've identified you need to do a this, you need to do a that, right? That kind of an idea. Or you should do this, you should do that, or you must do this, or you must do that, you must prove this, you must show that. Any of that kind of wording.
Yeah.
Where does the repetition come from? And the consolidation comes from understanding the meaning of those words,
right,
and putting them into, it's the same thing said
in different ways.
5 different ways.
Yeah.
You get it, right? And that actually results in a bunch of overlap.
Right, right.
Now, if you consolidate everything in a single view, at that stage, if you go even onto the strategic,
yeah,
using pAIperTrail results in a 70+% reduction. We get rid of all that overlap.
Wow, right. Excellent.
Now, we can't replace the fact that you need to provide evidence, perform tasks, and do stuff. So pAIperTrail doesn't do the work for you to make you compliant. However, the very fact that you have purchased pAIperTrail can satisfy a large percentage, a significant percentage, anywhere between 10 to 30% of the obligations
right.
that all of this compliance requires, because a lot of the compliance requirements are reporting breaches and collecting evidence and this, that, and the other thing, and having a compliance platform where you're managing tasks and tracking obligations and collecting evidence and doing periodic reviews and auditing things and that kind of thing. Right? All of that compliance activity. Having the platform satisfies a heck of a lot of those you musts, you should have, this is what you need, you got to have something. Right. So you don't start from zero as soon as you're a customer of pAIperTrail. You're anywhere from 10 to 30% along the way, depending on the profile of your business.
Right.
And what stages of compliance you've included in the profile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. That's very good news. You start already with an advantage.
Because you're talking about an 80 to 100% reduction in consulting fees.
Right.
It will tell you what is applicable and why, what your obligations are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Right. And I've been asked, we have in pAIperTrail, we spell it differently. We put in an AI.
Yeah.
Instead of pAIPER, it's pAIPER.
Yeah.
And I've been asked a number of times, is that what AI does? Is determine applicability and do all the consolidation? And my response to that is no.
Right.
AI is not necessary, nor is it appropriate for that particular activity. I like to use what I call RI, which is real intelligence.
Right.
Real intelligence of experience, expertise, and an intelligent means of determining based on a company's profile what things apply to them. It's called deterministic logic, if anybody wants to know the term for it. But that's what's used to determine it. It's based on rules, just like a consultant would be like, well, you're this size company, so this applies, right? You're in this market segment, so this applies. You're in, food manufacturing, so this applies. You're in this and that applies, right? That kind of stuff. It doesn't take an AI to figure that stuff out. What it takes is, a really smart engine, and smart questions that result in a consolidated list of obligations that track all the way up through frameworks. That's basically what it is. That's not the role of AI. The role of AI comes in a little bit later in the journey, and we'll get into that when we start discussing the various features and functions of the platform.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick look. We'll just take a gander around what the platform is, right? Now, the first thing I'm going to is this configure menu. Now, only the sysadmin, right? The main user, the owner of the platform, the one who purchased it, the one who's onboarding their organization into the platform, they have access to this, to this menu.
Right.
Other users really don't, right?
Yeah.
And onboarding is all about your profile. Now, later on, when we talk about profile, we'll demonstrate the wizard. We call it a wizard because basically what it does is it's asking you one question at a time.
Right.
You know, true, false, yes, no, size ranges, industry, blah, 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 right? And it goes on and on and on and on. And some questions are determined by your answer of prior questions, right?
Yeah.
They're conditionally asked. And other ones, you know, are asked no matter what the previous questions are. But it's an intelligent live list of questions, right?
Right. Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're locked in, okay?
Yeah.
However, you do have to complete the profile and answer all of the questions. Otherwise, there's really no point. You know, if you don't want to answer what size you are or what business you're in, it's really very, very difficult to determine what obligations apply to you when they all have to do with certain conditions and characteristics of your business. Every framework that comes out has certain, this applies to you if you are ABC, right?
Right.
So we just ask those ABC questions. There can be anywhere from 50 to 60 of these questions. And if you get into the more voluntary standards later on, then the number of those questions increases. But I think even though it's necessary, it's mandatory to go through the profile creation and answer all of the questions. You can leave it and come back to it if you don't have all the answers. But you do have to complete it before the platform can really do its work. Okay?
Right.
And you don't get to this screen until you've completed the wizard. Otherwise, you keep coming back to wherever you left off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I don't think it's too high a price to pay to ask, you know, for 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it takes somebody. They might know all the answers and it could be very, very quick, right?
Right. Right.
But profile is basically that's the key, right? Answering accurately to the profile questions. That happens during onboarding. Okay.
Right. Right.
The outcome of going through that is that you end up with the core compliance objects being populated.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that all begins as a result of your profile. This is where the value lives. So all of the various frameworks will be listed in here in a hierarchies, right?
Right.
Now we also take it upon ourselves, because frameworks are not always an effective means of managing obligations.
Right.
Okay. It can cause a lot of confusion for people. So we believe that having certain pillars and themes, management themes, business themes, right?
Yeah.
Management pillars with various themes underneath them. We add that so that people can take that kind of a view of their obligations, especially when they're looking at assigning obligations to different people.
Right.
You know, one person might be responsible for things that have to do with environmental things. Somebody else is dealing with the social stuff.
Yeah.
Another one is dealing with the government stuff. Another one is dealing with internet security and
health and safety, cyber essentials.
But it's broken down into management pillars and topics.
Right.
So those themes get populated.
Yeah.
And then a consolidated list of obligations is generated based on the profile.
Wow.
Okay.
Right.
And all of them are pending and open and, you know, and ready to go. But along with that comes suggestions of evidence that you need to provide, and the platform auto generates the tasks that you need to perform in order to provide the evidence.
Excellent.
And you basically like, okay, here's a task, provide the evidence, task complete, you know, and that some obligations will have multiple tasks you have to perform. Other ones only require one, right?
Yeah.
And last but not least, in that core compliance piece is breaches. Compliance is pointless in terms of a management practice unless you have a method of reporting breaches to policies, procedures, mandates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that breach mechanism, that recording breaches, sometimes they need to be reported to the authorities. Sometimes they need to be reported to an executive body. that kind of stuff. And you can also have tasks and evidence associated with how you managed a breach, right?
Yeah.
So it is a fairly simple object, but that comes
Well,
out, as an empty table. It's necessary to close the loop
yeah.
and be able to report breaches.
But that is one part of the requirements that perhaps not many people are aware of. That actually you have to record these breaches, and then also explain how you are going to prevent them in the future. So it's a kind of a dynamic process. It's not just like, oh, I reported, that's fine, I close the loop now. No, you have to put some thought there, because the auditors are going to look into which is a mechanism for control or deliverables or prevention or detection in the future.
That's correct. And those breaches can be associated with specific obligations that you were supposed to meet.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that will roll up to framework.
Yeah.
Right. So framework by framework, you could have breaches associated with them.
Yeah.
By virtue of what policy, what procedure, what mandate was breached.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's the core. That's probably the most important space.
Yeah.
Right. And the value comes in our consolidation and applicability, that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Okay.
Excellent.
Now we'll just move on to some of the little areas in case somebody is curious, right?
Yeah.
You've got the home area, which is where logged in users can engage their AI, see their alerts, the ones directed at them specifically, view their assigned tasks, and participate in discussion forums that are, handy when you're doing, interdepartmental discussions, or you want to make your own announcements, or you want to have, it's used for various purposes, but it's a typical discussion group kind of format where you've got, a particular forum, various posts and replies, that kind of stuff, right? Just to round it out.
Yeah.
We also, of course, have numerous handy customizable dashboards and reports.
Right.
All right. And users can also choose to have those appear as their default dashboard when they log in.
Yeah.
Right. And we've got some pre-written canned reports that we've written. Sometimes you want to understand your position in a dashboard, your compliance position, framework by framework, or pillar and theme by theme, or just the obligations, or just tasks.
Yeah.
And you may also want to be tracking things like your breach reporting performance, right? The time between it being detected and its occurrence, and when you reported it and when you resolved it, those can kind of be important. So there's lots of good reasons for having dashboards and reports in pAIperTrail, and that's where you would find them. Last but not least, I wanted to kind of touch on this space. There is going to be numerous compliance-related features introduced in the near future. We're going to start with the core. That's what we're launching immediately. But then we will be adding in our Plus and our Pro version additional tools that are all compliance-related value adds.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Excellent.
And that pretty much covers the navigation group. So thank you very much for your time. And
no, thank you. I think it starts to get very, very clear that all the things that we were coming or sharing in the past 3 months, which is pretty much all the logic on the process of the thinking, now we start to see in the screen how it's going to be in real time, which is absolutely fantastic, because actually now we are going to invite people to join our waitlist, as we are very close to start to launch, and we are sharing now how we are progressing towards that launch in the coming weeks.
That's right. I don't think we've really stressed it, but I should let the cat out of the bag that we will be selecting a number of those early adopters and bringing them on board, as with free licenses.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, just to so they can share with us what they think, and also with the world, obviously.
Yeah,
what they think and what.
And our early adopters are going to be, the people that we ask about priorities for which of those Plus and Pro features we should launch first and next, and that kind of stuff. They'll have some say about it. and also some feedback on how it's performing, if anything's missing,
Yeah.
And if people observe, and I'm fairly confident about this, but we're certainly open to correction if obligations and framework applicability and
Yes.
stuff like that isn't 100% accurate. We appreciate feedback there as well,
Yeah.
so we could improve the product. But we put a heck of a lot of effort into the rules engine, the logic for determining applicability.
And that feedback is very important, because at the end, we are looking into make a savings not only in the time and activities and the people, how they operate in the companies, also to be more efficient. So the SMEs and MMEs now can operate with similar systems that cost hundreds of thousands, and large enterprise or blue chip companies now is available to almost anybody. So we are democratizing, in a way, all our experiences in large enterprises to
we're
everybody.
doing just like what into QuickBooks did in the early 80s with accounting. So no system can come out and actually create transactions for you. They can only let you record it, right? Your business activity is your transactions. However, it used to be very complicated to record transactions and to track them and get reporting and know where you stand. That used to take a heck of a lot of effort. And then simple accounting softwares came out and democratized it for the smaller companies. Whereas previously only big enterprises could afford software to help them solve that problem. So it doesn't do the evidence creation work for you, all right? Even though buying the platform does solve some of the problems of compliance, especially that breach reporting. That can actually get you up to that 30% if you make sure you use that bit, right?
Exactly.
But democratizing compliance, I like that.
Yeah, fantastic. And stay tuned, because next week we are going to continue exploring all the benefits and how you as an organization and as an individual can benefit out of pAIperTrail. And we're going to show more stuff.
Next week, we're going to focus on profile creation. We just want to demonstrate it a bit. From here on in, for the next 6 to 8 sessions, we're going to actually discuss the individual objects that are in there in detail and what you can do with them. And we'll kind of show a little bit more demonstration that way. Today, it was just navigation groups. Next time will be individual objects and how they operate.
And it's very important, the profile creation, because at the end, everything is subject to the company profile. So if you have a very well answered profile, so we can profile your company correctly, then the obligation will start to be more unclear, and will save you a lot of time and efforts in things actually you might think and you might apply, but it doesn't need the requirement.
It's the old garbage in, garbage out kind of principle. If you don't answer the profile questions accurately, how could we be expected to read minds and and determine compliance obligations, right?
One thing that actually I guess that many people are going to ask, this is 100% private and ring fence. So this information answer your profile question. Probably you can explain a bit better, but actually this is highly secure environment. So then it's not sharing information with anybody. It's not anonymized.
No, we're not collecting data for sale.
Right.
A lot of SaaS platforms, that is part of their strategy. They want to collect as much data as they can, anonymize it, and then try to sell it to various companies. We don't have any intention of doing so. And in fact, we'll be putting it in our terms and conditions that we will not do so, right? That's part of our pledge, is we will not sell on that data. At the very worst, we would use it to learn more about how we can improve the platform, and that's pretty much it. So one customer can never access another customer's data. We have, secured logins, named users, and 2-factor authentication. So the data is safe. It's as safe as your bank account.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Thank you, Richard, very much. Looking forward for next week.
Great. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.